in another room in my house. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you about Delilah and the deadly lure. But I just wanted to read you a story because I am actually all the women of the Bible. I am going to be giving you stories of all the women of the Bible, something a little different. And so I wanted to also talk to you, but I want to do this with you. And so, anyway, it is Delilah and the deadly lure. So I'm going to be telling you a story, and then we are going to get into, let me see what chapter that I need to be in. Judges 16, chapter 16, verses 4 through 21. It was so cold. I need to put a jacket on. But anyway, we are going to be getting to this. It's going to be verses 4 through 21. I will be reading out of the King James Version. So let me read the scripture first, and then I will get into the story of Delilah and the deadly lure. Okay? So now, this was in Judges. This is in chapter 16, verses 4 through 21. And this is Samson and Delilah. Okay? 4 through 21. Okay? And here we go. And it reads as follows. And it says, and it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her and said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will give thee every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. And Samson said unto her, if they bind me with 7 green withs that were never dry, then shall I be weak and be as another man? And then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green withs, which had not been dry, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber. And she said unto them, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he brake the withs as a thread of tow is broken where it toucheth the fire, so his strength was not known. And Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if they bind me fast with new ropes that never were occupied, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Delilah therefore took new ropes and bound him therewith, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And there were liars in wait abiding in the chamber, and he brake them from off his arms like a thread. Verse 13. And Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. And she fastened it with the pin, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awakened out of his sleep, and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. And she said unto him, how canst thou say, I love thee, when thine heart is not with me? Thou hast mocked me these 3 times, and hast not told me wherein thy great strength lieth. Okay. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words, and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart, and said unto her, there hath not come a razor upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from thee, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up unto her, and brought money in their hand. And she made him sleep upon her knees. And she made him sleep upon her knees, and she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson, and he awoke out of his sleep and said, I will go out at other times before and shake myself. And he wist not that the Lord was departed from him. But the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with feathers of brass. And he did grind in the prison house. Okay. Now that is from verses 4 through 21. Now, Samson entered into compromise, right? He entered into compromise with Delilah by continuing to disregard God's instruction to remain separate from the wicked nations in Canaan. And you can go and read Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1 through 4. And then he failed to realize that compromise with idol worships and immoral people opens up one's life to deception, demonic attack, and ultimately destruction. And that's what happened in verses 19 through 21 is when you decide to compromise and get involved with idol worshipers and immoral people, it opens up one's life to deception. It opens it up to demonic attacks and ultimately destruction. And that's what was going on with Samson when he entered into compromise with Delilah by continuing to disregard God's instruction to remain separate from the wicked nations in Canaan. And there's a lot of people out here that enter into these compromising situations with other people for whatever reason. And she actually was able to manipulate him into doing so. And so then Samson is an example of those believers who think that God will remain with them even while they continue in sinful and immoral conduct. And that's the thing. God is not going to remain with you when you continue to continue in sinful and immoral conduct. God, he's not going to do it. I mean, eventually he will give you over to a reprobate mind. And that's what he's going to do if you are, continual in sin and immoral conduct. And so the Lord in this case, he departed from this judge because of his continued disobedience. And you can go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27, and then Hebrews chapter 3, verse 6 through 19. He continued in sin and God departed from him. And see, this passage strongly warns us that it is possible for the Lord to depart from a persistently sinful person without him or her realizing that God can depart from you when you continue to operate in sin and immoral conduct. And so let me read this story to you and then we'll be done. It's a few pages. You want me to do what? Asked Delilah, a disbelieving smile turning to a laugh. You want me to do what? And so get your lover to share his secret, answered the spokesman for the Philistine chiefs curtly. Convince him to tell you what makes him so much stronger than any other man that he can destroy anyone anytime he wants to. You can do that, I suppose. Delilah drew herself up in an impetuous frown, underlining her scorn. Certainly I can, but why should I? Why do you interfere in this matter? What will you get out of it? You find out where his strength comes from, he answered her matter-of-factly, and tell us. Then we can take care of him. See to it that he's no longer a threat to us. Because he's our enemy. Samson's not my enemy, she smiled lazily. Not at all. And she smoothed her skirts with her hands, a sensuous gesture that made the man blink in spite of himself. She caught the reaction. Her smile broadened as he flushed. Well, then, he said slowly, his voice like honey, because if you do, we shall give you 1,100 silver shekels. He paused significantly, his eyes narrowing as they met hers directly, and his lips smiled very slowly indeed. The image of a hungry mountain cat toying with a plump rabbit came irresistibly to mind, and Delilah felt the shiver work its way up her spine. She understood. If she refused to entrap Samson, she would suffer, perhaps even die, and the chiefs would find some other way to destroy him. If she agreed, well, Poor old Samson, handsome and strong as he was, excellent lover as he proved to be, was doomed anyway. And 1,100 silver shekels would buy a very, very nice marriage afterwards. Pursing her lips, she nodded. Done, she said quietly and held out her hand. Taking it, the spokesman bowed. Done, he repeated. His lips brushed her palm. And he was gone. It had not occurred to the lady of Sorek that she may have difficulty learning Samson's secret. He was besotted with her after all, and with good reason. She assured herself, checking the fit of her green gown. I've got him. Poor thing, honey cakes from an infant. Delilah began her campaign that night with a direct question. Tell me, lover, she purred. Where did you get your great strength from? She smiled at him enticingly, then moved in for another kiss. When she caught her breath, she murmured, You're so strong. I wonder what could one possibly do to take that strength away? She pressed against him in a way he found entirely distracting, and only rather later and after a suggestive from the lady did he answer. If anyone could tie me up using 7 fresh bowstrings, before they've dried, that would do it. My strength would drain away, and I'd be just like anyone else. Impossible, she replied breathlessly, continuing her seduction. Impossible. Several days later, supplied with 7 new undried bowstrings by the chiefs whose men were concealed in her room, Delilah entertained Samson. To their mutual delight, she had feared the presence of observers might inhibit but in fact forgot them entirely in the first deep kiss that seemed to her to mingle their souls as well as their bodies. When their passion finally abated and Samson had fallen deeply asleep, Delilah felt herself beginning to drift, still swimming the sea of pleasure they had made. Somehow, though, she couldn't quite cast off from the shore. There was something nagging at the back of her mind. And as though one of the watchers had upended the bedside pitcher over her, dousing her with chilled wine, she caught her breath and sat up with a bounce. The bowstrings! Scrabbling in the drapery surrounding the bed, she loosened the bowstrings, slipped them out of their hiding place, and bound Samson with them. Hand and foot, yes, the knots were tight. They would hold an ordinary man. Sliding back into the bed next to him, she pulled up the cover. Then, as though startled, flung it back, shouting, Beloved Samson, it's the Philistines, help! And at the signal, the hidden soldiers sprang from their hiding places to launch themselves on Samson. Before they could touch him, he leaped up, broke the bowstrings as though they were spider webs, and took off after his attackers, who had wasted no time in racing out the door as fast as they could. You're lucky he didn't kill them, Delilah said to the chief spokesman the next morning. Good thing they were all sprinters. They ran like the wind. They'd better have, he growled. They know not to let Samson get anywhere near them. And mistress, he added in a wintry tone, if they hadn't escaped that monster, it would have been your fault. Your information was wrong. Not my fault, Delilah blazed. That is exactly what Samson said. If that's true, he said, you're slipping. Even a penny whore can tell when her mark's telling her tales, and you're top of the line, you say. Delilah was livid. How dare you, she hissed. I am not a whore of any description. I am a well-bred lady who enjoys the companionship of civilized men who appreciate my mind and my charms. If they give me gifts, that is their business and mine, not yours. Whatever, the spokesman returned without interest. Try again. We must neutralize Samson one way or another. Try harder, he advised, gave her a long look, and left. Delilah was shaken, both by her failure and by the subtle threat of the chiefs. She did know when a man was lying to her, she was sure, and Samson's successful deceit frightened her. I'm not losing my touch, she told herself. I can't be. Several nights later, entertaining Samson with delight, for she really found him a marvelous lover, Delilah said, I'm really glad the bowstrings didn't take away your strength. Beloved, even though you did play me for a fool with your lie, it was very clever of you, and it saved my life with yours. I'd just die if anything ever happened to you. She watched Samson smile and preen himself a bit. He was thinking she knew that everyone praised and feared him for his strength, except her. She was the only one who saw beyond her own delight in his physical being, in his strength, real strength, his brains. This was a delight he had never experienced before, and she knew he would want to experience it again. But this time she was sure he would tell her the truth, to impress her, if anything else, with how very clever he had been. This then was the time to ask. She began to tease him again to tell her the real secret of his strength. Just in case, she said, someone wants to harm you, and I find out about it before you do, I can protect you. At that he laughed. Not to worry, sweet thing, he said confidently. That will never happen. But suppose it does. I don't know. That would be terrible. I'd never forgive myself if I weren't able to save you just because I didn't know where the danger was. The nonverbal persuasion she added did the trick. Once he had begun breathing normally again, he told her that if somebody tied him up with 7 brand new ropes that no one had ever tied, his strength would vanish. You wouldn't know me from any other man, he said, smiled sidelong at her. Now I know you fibbing, she laughed. I'll always know you from every man in the world. It was several days later that she again allowed the chief men to hide in her room. The new rope, 7 strands of it, was laid out around the room on the floor right next to the wall. The strands would look like part of the decoration of the room if anyone checked, but the room was dim and Delilah had no intentions of allowing Samson to concentrate on anything but her. Her success was, as usual, complete, and Samson slept like a rock afterwards. Nimbly, she tied his limbs with the new rope, doubling the knots. She thought about dampening them with water, but decided the risk of wakening her lover was too great. Besides, she reflected, it's the new rope that will steal his strength, not the knots. Sliding back into bed, she rested against him for a moment, regretting what she had done, but realizing that really she had no choice. Then, drawing a deep breath, she screamed, Samson, beloved, the Philistines have broken in. Help me. And Samson surged to his feet, the rope seeming to melt from his arms and legs as he took a swing at the nearest Philistine emerging from his hiding place. As they had done earlier, the attackers fled, Samson after them at top speed, and she was left to confront her second failure and to prepare for the chase. They were not happy. For that matter, she was not happy. Had she fallen in love with her lover instead of simply rendering him helpless in her toils, bound by his lust and her charms? It was a one she resolutely thrust aside. She would manage Samson. She told the chief who came to rely on her. You'd better, was all he said, but she got the message. Hello, Shaitai founders. Welcome. How are you? Peace and blessings to you on today. You'd better, was all he said, but she got the message. Time was running out, and so was her credit. If she wanted to save her own life, let alone earn that 1,100 silver shekels it had soon to be, there could be no more mistakes. But what else could she do? Pausing at her weaving, Delilah considered. Tears. No, not to start with any teasing. She'd done that. Sexual experiments. There were a couple of those she hadn't used on him yet. Maybe, but she needed a something to distract him, to disarm him. She winced at her words. Her failures lured in her memory. I've got to find something, she told herself intensely, punching the shuttle angrily between the webs. Something that will take his attention away from what he's been telling me so he doesn't realize what he's done. Something. Wait, what about this? She looked at the hanging she was weaving as though she had never seen it before, let alone and woven it up to this point. It was to be a lion at bay, surrounded by hunters and obviously doomed, but so valiant, so strong, so powerful that he looked as if he might very well eat those who had trapped him. She had gotten as far as down as the lion's head with the weaving, and there had found her design unsatisfactory. Suppose she'd asked Samson to take a look at the design and tell her what was wrong with it. That might work. Then I'll get his secret out of him. She promised herself it will be easy. The weaving did catch Samson's attention, but oddly, he laughed heartily, ho, 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 and at it, then sighed, his mouth twisting in a fleeting bitterness. She had not seen in him before. Nothing, nothing, he answered when she asked, concerned what was wrong. He studied her design. Your lion would do very well. He said at last, provided you give him really sharp teeth and claws and keep his head up, defiant and proud. Make sure the eyes are open and that he's glaring at his tormentors, like, glaring. And they may take his body, and with a few quick charcoal's lines caught the spirit he was talking about. He was delighted. Do that, and you'll have the best lion in the world, he boomed. Later in their love making, he had said with an odd smile, answering her usual tease, weaving is dangerous, love. Catch my 7 flocks of hair in the web of your weaving, and you'll reduce me to ordinary strength. I'll be just like any poor soul in your nets. Nonsense, she had returned. If anyone is in the nets, I am. I'll never escape you, beloved, and I certainly don't want to. Her heart pounded. She had the answer she had sought. She knew she did. And that failed too. The 7 locks of hair she had so carefully woven into the web, into the line, in fact, dogging the peg down as tightly as it would go, had simply melted out of the weaving the moment her screams roused him from his sleep in her arms, and he had roared in his pursuit of the unfortunate soldiers of the chief. That's it, the spokesman declared the day after her third failure. You're useless. We'll get him some other way. Kiss your shekels goodbye, mistress. He gazed stonily at her, and then he left. He shut her door with an exaggerated care, more terrifying than a slam. Galvanized, Delilah determined she would break Samson and learn his secret. His determination rose, not just because her own life was at stake, nor because she wanted the 1,100 shekels. Now, what if she feared was that her own powers had vanished in the fires of their passionate and delightful couplings, and that would be a real disaster, she thought. So she began skillfully, and with no hint of annoyance, nor indeed of anything but besotted adoration, to nag him, declaring each time they met that he could not possibly love her and withhold the insignificant truth she had asked of him. I'm no Philistine, she would laugh. And you are, most certainly, beloved, not my enemy. He would answer, devouring her, but would give her no farther reply. Days later, yielding to her persistence as much as to his enchantment with her, now at its height, he gave in. It's not much of a secret, he told her, smiling, his index finger wiggling the very tip of her nose as she giggled. It's the hair. I was a Nazarite by my mother when I was conceived. Nazarite, she asked, puzzled. What's that? He looked at her, startled, then nodded. Right, you have no way of knowing that. Basically, it means no wine or spirits, no food our law calls unclean, and no haircuts. The consecration is to the Lord God, and those are its signs. So you've never had a haircut? Delilah was intrigued. She had wondered at the luxuriousness of his hair, as thick and shining as her own. And if I do, he added quite matter-of-factly, that will be the end of my strength. Why? She asked, for the moment forgetting that this at last was the secret he had guarded so well. Because the consecration wasn't my mother's ideal, but the Lord God's. And the strength I have is being given me for his purposes. If I break that consecration, it means I'm returning from him and his strength will leave me. Very simple now. And he smiled in the particular way Delilah had come to recognize with a shiver of delight as a prelude to passion. Yes, beloved, she whispered. Afterwards, she had sent word to the chiefs on the chance that their offer would still be open. She would rather hope it was not, for more and more she was coming to regret her involvement with them and to see her prying as a kind of betrayal. But if the 1,100 silver shekels were still on the offer, it seemed a shame to let them get away. If Samson were going to be destroyed anyway, he'd want me to have that much, she told herself firmly. If illogically, and anyway, they may really have given up on me and not to anything about my information. They had not given up on her, and a band of soldiers, one equipped with a shining sharp barber's razor, disposed themselves in their usual hiding places in her chamber. They brought chains with them, and one of them had a sack that clinked significantly, but no one mentioned either. Delilah found loving Samson that day especially sweet, and tinged with bitter sorrow as well. Her lion was in excellent spirits, suspecting nothing, and he took them to heights beyond any they had scaled before, laughing in his joy. She joined him in the laughter, though hers had a touch of tears. And when at last they returned to earth and he fell asleep, trustingly in her arms, she wanted nothing so much as to have her observers and allies vanish into smoke. They had not. As her tentative gesture, the man with the razor emerged, carrying a basin of water, soap, and a towel. Expertly, he shaved off the 7 locks of her hair. 7 locks of hair. And as each one fell into the towel, Delilah felt her heart sink a little farther. Finally, the barber nodded to her, scooped up the towel full of Samson's hair, dropped the razor into his basin, rose and slipped back, leaving the field of action clear for his fellow soldiers. Delilah cleared her throat and around the lump of unshed tears called, "Samson, Samson, wake up! The Philistines have broken in!" And at once he rose, meeting the emerging soldiers as he had before. But when he called upon his strength, he found none, his face white with shock. He raised both hands to his head and felt his shaved scalp. His howl of misery was met by the ferocity of the soldiers, no longer afraid of his enemy, of this enemy. They blinded him as he stood there, and his scream tore at Delilah's heart. Horrified at their cruelty, she made a gesture as if to stop them, but dropped her hand to her sides helpless. They loaded their blinded enemy with bronze chains as they huddled him out of her room. The chief who had first contacted her dropped the clinking sack on her bed with a contemptuous, "Your wage, mistress." A year later, Delilah learned the rest. They had taken him directly from her room to Gaza and set him to turning the mill. Then, several months later, a festival of Dagon, they had him brought into the temple. They had him brought into the temple to entertain them with feats of strength. His hair had grown back, but his superhuman strength had not returned with it, though his commitment to the Lord God was stronger than it had ever been. He had asked the boy who led him around to bring him to the central pillars, the one supporting the building, and to fix his chains to the ring there. The boy did so, and Samson, uttering his prayer to the Lord God for a final return of the strength he had given him to use against the Philistines, had pulled the building down and killed the 1,000 inside it, dying with them. Hearing the news, Delilah felt her heart lift. "Good for you, my lion," she thought. "You've beaten them all. You've won." She swallowed the lump in her throat, closed her eyes briefly, then looked at her companion. "More wine, husband?" She smiled. Now, this was Delilah, Samson's wife, and the cause of betrayal. And I read earlier, if you just was tuning in, and thank you so much for tuning in and the thumbs up. This was from Judges chapter 16, verses 4 through 21. But I'm reading from this book. This is Delilah and the Deadly Lure, and this is from all the women of the Bible. And so I will be doing a little something different. I'm reading the women of the Bible, so I will start telling you, reading the scripture and going over that with you, and then reading a story out of the Bible. And that's a good thing, I believe. And so it's good to learn about, people in the Bible and women of the Bible and things like that and what they were capable of. And there's some good women in the Bible. And then there were some women that were doing some manipulation and things like that. But she wind up marrying Samson in the end. But she did play a dirty game with this man, and they were able to capture him and, cut off his hair, and his hair, his strength was in his locks, and his mother had never cut his hair for that reason. And so when they did that, he had lost his strength, but when he came back, he was stronger. God restored that strength. And so I hope that you have enjoyed the commentary on this, the video, and if you've missed any part of it, to go back from the beginning. So I thank you all again for tuning in. God bless you all on today. And then don't forget to check out my video that I did earlier. It's actually going to be uploading. It's on civil union versus marriage. And that is some good information that you can share with other people. Don't forget to stick with it. I'm getting ready to get out and do my exercise. And then don't forget to follow me on Instagram, StandupBcounted. Check out my OitsSharine Jewelry. Valentine's time is coming. And I don't know about you, but I do like the fact of all the pretty stuff that they do in the hearts. And I will be uploading some more pieces of my jewelry as I get finished with that. So God bless you all. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for the thumbs up. And don't forget to share the video. God bless you all on today, and I will see you soon.